If you've ever walked out of an interview thinking that went really well, only to get rejected days or weeks later, this video is for you. Because one of the biggest misconceptions candidates have is that the interview is where hiring decisions are made. It isn't. I've spent almost 20 years in recruitment and talent acquisition, and in this video I'm going to explain what actually happens behind the scenes. Who really influences the decision? What happens after interviews finish? Why good feedback still leads to rejection, and how risk and internal politics quietly shape outcomes. Once you understand this, a lot of job search frustration starts to make sense. Most candidates assume the person interviewing them is the decision maker. Sometimes that's true. Often it isn't. In reality, hiring decisions are usually influenced by multiple people, not one. You typically have the hiring manager, HR or talent acquisition, sometimes a senior leader, occasionally a peer or stakeholder. Even if one person wants to hire you, they may not have full authority. I've seen plenty of situations where the hiring manager is keen, HR is neutral, a senior leader says, let's see more candidates, and that alone can kill momentum. Hiring is rarely democratic, but it is political. Each person involved has different priorities, different risks they're worried about, different incentives, and none of them want to be responsible for a bad hire. That's important to remember. Here's what most candidates don't realise. The interview is just input. The decision happens after. Once interviews finish, recruiters usually gather feedback, sometimes formally, sometimes informally. That feedback often sounds like, good candidate, strong technically, nice culture fit. But none of that is a decision. What actually happens next is comparison. You're not being assessed in isolation. You're being assessed relative to other candidates' internal expectations and risk tolerance. Questions being asked behind closed doors sound more like, who feels safest? Who can we justify internally? Who will settle in fastest? Who is least likely to fail publicly? That's very different from who interviewed best. This is why delays happen. This is why ghosting happens. This is why you can get great feedback and still be rejected. This is the part that frustrates people the most. You hear, everyone really liked you, and then, we've decided to go in a different direction. That usually means risk one. Here are a few common unspoken reasons. Someone else felt like a safer hire. Another candidate already worked in a similar environment. An internal candidate suddenly appeared. The role changed slightly mid-process. The hiring manager lost confidence under pressure. Sometimes nothing changed about you. What changed was the organization's appetite for risk. And the more senior the role, the more risk-averse hiring becomes. That's why experienced professionals often struggle more than juniors. Experience doesn't always reduce perceived risk. Sometimes it increases it. Hiring is not about potential. It's about avoiding regret. Most hiring managers are asking themselves one question. Can I defend this decision if it goes wrong? That's why. Familiar backgrounds win. Similar industry experience is favored. Non-linear CVs get questioned. Overqualification makes people nervous. This also explains why culture fit is used so loosely. Often it really means, do I feel comfortable taking responsibility for hiring this person? And comfort is emotional, not rational. This isn't fair, but it is real. Understanding this stops you blaming yourself unnecessarily. Here's something candidates almost never see. Sometimes a role is already earmarked for someone, being hired to satisfy a budget, being paused without telling candidates, being restructured mid-process. You might interview brilliantly and still lose because a reorganization is coming. Headcount approval is shaky. Someone senior disagrees quietly. The role was never as open as advertised. None of this shows up in feedback emails, and none of it reflects your ability. If there's one thing I want you to take away, it's this. Rejection is often about risk, not capability. Understanding how hiring decisions are really made helps you stop overanalyzing interviews, position yourself more safely, interpret feedback properly, protect your confidence. I write about this kind of behind-the-scenes stuff in a lot more depth in my newsletter. If you want practical, no-nonsense insight into how hiring actually works, you can find that in the link below. Thanks for watching. Do hit the subscribe and like buttons. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!